Happy Saturday, folks. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your beloved, amazing weekend, and you're able to sit down, relax, and watch my face. Really happy to have you here with us. This is the thing here, folks. You probably saw my poll on YouTube at this point. I was kind of surprised. Over 1,000 people made their voices known. Was I going to cover Brookfield in China, or was I going to cover Carney signing away the carbon tax, quote unquote? Which one was it going to be? And all of you said, we want Brookfield and China. But then I opened up the comments and everyone's like, both. And I'm like, oh boy, y'all cracked me up. So here's the thing. As I was doing my research and going into it, realized actually I can do both in a good amount of time and bring it all together for the people. You've made your voice very, very clear. So we'll be diving into Brookfield being so very close to China, the CCP, Xi Jinping himself. We'll be talking about all of that. And then wrapping it up with what we saw yesterday, the little magic trick that Carney pulled yesterday with the consumer carbon tax and what actually happened there when he decided to sign away the tax. Or did it happen? We'll talk about all of it. But first, before we get into it, I was on a podcast recently, the Builder by Day podcast hosted by Ron McNeil. It's a up and starting podcast here in Nova Scotia. They had me into their studio. It was a really well done studio, and it was a great interview. I had a great time talking to the host Ryan, talking about my life, how I got into politics, what I was like before I did this, and if you're interested in hearing the backstory and how I got into what the show is today, how we got here, and how my host became my host, and all that. Feel free to go over and watch that. I'll link it right here for all the homies who want to jump over. But first, just watch this first before you go to that, because this is going to be the juice, the info that you want and you desire. And then you can go over to watch that episode and have some fun. You know what I'm saying? So all before Hockey Night in Canada tonight, Let's have a conversation, shall we? New article dropped from the Bureau. Brookfield's deep ties to Chinese land, loans, and green deals, and a real estate tycoon with CCP links raise questions as Carney takes over from Trudeau, which is the question we all are having. And what we're going to read over is kind of bits and pieces of this article and show you the kind of the story that we're working with and what is happening. So let's talk about some of the investments that Brookfield made before Carney came along. So a review of corporate documents reveals that Brookfield, the influential $900 billion Canadian investment fund from which Liberal Prime Minister-to-be Mark Carney stepped away from in order to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's leader, maintains over $3 billion in politically sensitive investments with Chinese state-linked real estate and energy companies, along with a substantial offshore banking presence. One of its major real estate ventures, a $750 million entry into high-end Shanghai commercial property in 2013, involved a Hong Kong tycoon affiliated with the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which the CIA labels as a central United Front entity of Beijing. Brookfield already doing some work and getting involved with people that are entrenched and linked to the CCP. And again, this isn't a direct link to Mark Carney per se, but these are the people, this is kind of the work that Brookfield was getting into before Mark Carney came on the scene. So it's kind of interesting. They say here, the investment occurred while China's real estate bubble was peaking. Last year, as China's market crashed and vacancy soared in Shanghai, Brookfield under Carney secured hundreds of millions of dollars in loans from the Bank of China to refinance Shanghai commercial land holdings. According to the Bureau's research, this emergency loan came a decade after Carney, serving as governor of the Bank of England, aided Beijing by facilitating the Bank of China's expansion of its global financial footprint. In his 2013 speech, UK at the heart of renewed globalization, Carney announced that the Bank of England has signed an agreement with the People's Bank of China, helping the internationalization of the renminbi, is a global good. Brookfield, that's a big part of their portfolio, is investments in China, and then learning that there was work that they've done and things that they've invested in that are linked to the CCP. Then Mark Carney came onto the scene and expanded those investments into assets in China and Shanghai. And the reason why this is important, why things we need to kind of keep in mind, is Carney has developed these relationships within China and developed relationships with people who work very closely or within groups like the United Front or are very closely tied to the CCP in China, which then makes you beg the question, China's not our friend. This is something we really have to, keep in mind, especially those who we've lived as a millennial, especially those who are in the millennial age. You've kind of known more or less a very peaceful world. There wasn't really a whole lot of intensity until things started ramping up later in our lives. And we always viewed all the world, we should just, globalists, we just should all work together and get along. The problem is There are people and countries in this world that don't agree with our lifestyle, don't agree with what we're about, and don't want to see us succeed. China being one of them, Russia being another. What's happened over the past several decades, at least since the Cold War, we've done things that have taken Russia out of the global picture, or at least trying to kind of keep them along or keep them happy enough so they don't want to attack anybody. But overall, America itself has always been the world player and controlled how things operate. And naturally, over time, there are other big world economies that come on the scene, and this is the issue, is America, along with its allies, welcomed China into the global fray and thought, we don't agree on ideals, but hey, let's keep you as a part of the trade talks, and we can start moving our manufacturing, move things over to you, help you be involved in the global community. Then over time, China accumulated more wealth, more influence, and now we see the China we see today, where they're back on their feet, and now they're trying to subvert the West. And so when you have your enemy who doesn't like you is now sending fentanyl precursors to subvert your culture and society, sending over Chinese police stations to intimidate former Chinese citizens, they're not good guys. And I understand that investment in business can be separate from politics, but there's other times where it's not. And so when you have now your prime minister who is voted in by 150,000 people in the country, supposedly, who's had potential dealings, business dealings, you want to know, okay, how close is he? Was it just a business dealing? Was it just a transaction? Or is he leaning more towards China versus, say, leaning towards allies in the West, like the States? That's the question a lot of people are having. It says, while Brookfield has already amassed well over $3 billion in estimated investments and managed assets in China before Carney took the helm in 2020, research indicates that he played a role in expanding the firm's footprint there. This included refinancing its 2019 acquisition of Shanghai commercial real estate, initially valued at approximately $2 billion Canadian at the peak of China's real estate bubble, though its actual worth was likely significantly lower than Brookfield secured nearly $300 million at 4% interest from the Bank of China last year. So that's just work he's done on behalf of Brookfield, working with China. And again, I'm not trying to allege anything with those dealings. It's just something to take note of. The fact he came into Brookfield, he realized that their strategy was to expand more in China, and he helped them expand more in China and built more connections. We see here as well. Beyond just corporate dealings, Carney has also interacted with Chinese financial institutions at global economic forums, appearing alongside figures such as Jin LeCun, president of the Asian Financial Investment Bank. The AIIB is a China-led institution that promotes large-scale infrastructure investments backed by Chinese capital. These ties suggest that Carney has built closer relationships with key figures in China's financial and political circles, connections that could shape his economic policies as he assumes leadership of Canada's government today. And this is the point we're trying to make here, right? Very well done article here by the Bureau. We're not trying to make the connections like, there's this huge conspiracy going on. Let's highlight the connections that are already there. We've seen the work he's done. We've seen how he's operated. We've seen the business dealings, and we've seen how close he likes to get to China, how close he has been with China on behalf of Brookfield in the past, a Canadian-led firm, or supposed to be a Canadian-based firm, no longer these days. People are right to ask where the allegiance of the prime minister lies. We saw what the Democrats did to Trump back in 2016 to 2020. Well, he had business dealings with Russia. That means he's a Russian asset. Like the left will run with it. Right now, I'm operating in as best of faith I can right now with Carney. Like I'm being overly fair, if I'm being quite frank. We saw what the left did to Trump in 2016 and 2020 over Russia, and they're kind of doing the same thing now. But it was far worse in that first term. We have these dealings, Steele dossier, blah, blah, blah. He's an asset of China. I, to this day, was at an event, no word of a lie, folks, where someone told me that they truly believed Trump was being mind controlled by Putin, Manchurian candidate. I was like, you guys are far, like 2016 and 2020 did a number on people psychologically. And for them to believe something like that is something else. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to do that with Carney. What I want us to do is use our brains, look at the data, look how he's operated, who he's met with, who he's chatted with, and then you can ask the question, does that influence, or could that influence his loyalties? Is he doing it for Canada, or do his loyalties lie elsewhere? That is a legitimate question, especially as heated as geopolitics are right now in our country. We have to ask this question. Is he going to be putting Canada first, or is he going to be putting the WEF first, based off of Chinese-like policies? Questions that people have. and should have, because it was the end of this article that really caught my attention and a statement that we saw from China themselves, the CCP. As Carney takes office today, scrutiny of his financial dealings and Brookfield's deep ties to China and offshore banking is likely to intensify. With Canada's economic future becoming more entangled in global trade conflicts, Carney's business background offers both a wealth of expertise and a complex network of financial entanglements, factors that could potentially produce lasting consequences for Canadian citizens, whether they are aware of it or not. Earlier this week, the Global Times, widely regarded as a vocal outlet for the Chinese Communist Party, signaled Beijing's approval of Carney's victory, at least for now. When asked about Carney's leadership win in Canada's ruling Liberal Party and is expected to rise to Prime Minister, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said Monday that China has taken note of the reports and extends its congratulations to Mr. Carney, outlet reported. Mao added, "We hope Canada maintains an objective and rational understanding of China and adopts a pragmatic approach, working with China to improve and develop bilateral relations." That piece there, folks, is what you should be taking note of. An objective, rational understanding of China. Not one that is opposing China, not one that is critical of China, no, one that is rational of China. What does rational look like to the CCP, an authoritarian party and regime? What does rational actually look like to them? The fact they think Mark Carney is rational and has a rational stance against them should tell you a lot. The fact that they went all out and attacked Chrystia Freeland, trying to interfere in the Liberal leadership race, should tell you a lot. Look, I'm not the greatest fan of Chrystia Freeland, but she did have a pretty tough stance on Beijing, and they did not want her anywhere near the Prime Minister's seat. They want someone who was friendly to them, someone they knew, someone they were familiar with, right? Someone who is rational. So these are the questions you need to be having. And right now, there are some members of the press who are asking it, and I can appreciate it. And this is, he was asked yesterday after he was sworn in, how are you going to work with our allies, this, that, the other. Look how he reacts.
We'll understand as well. Thank you.
Allies, sir. Do you want to?
No, I don't think we need. I don't think we need to hear it from Nous sommes maîtres. We're masters in our home. We're in charge.
I'm the captain now.
We're in charge. It's always nice when people say nice things about you, but we don't need it. We're not seeking it. What the discussions I will have on behalf of the government in Paris and in London will relate to opportunities that both our countries share, as well as our shared history.
So this is just kind of a question of what's going to be happening with these meetings over in Europe this upcoming week. And look how defensive he gets. Look how he just, hey, hold up here. As the pressure mounts, as I hope it mounts, and the media that he allows in his vicinity, I certainly hope they start asking the question about his financial dealings. Because the more of those questions come up, more of these reactions are going to happen. And I retweeted this today. And I said, it's only a matter of time before people see the real Mark Carney. And I'm going to try and get to this carbon tax thing pretty quickly here for you folks. So we saw this yesterday, right? He did this whole spiel. He talked. He did his thing.
Set of measures that this government
over the carbon tax
is taking to ensure that we fight against climate change, that our companies are competitive, and the country moves forward. So it's my honor, on behalf of my colleagues, to sign this order.
Like, for real, though, catch what happened there, folks. Have we really ever seen this often when a prime minister has been at the helm when bills get passed? Typically, this shot doesn't happen. Me as a prime minister, we know, at least in this case, the carbon tax has been divisive, yada, 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 signs off. Carbon tax gone. Symbolism. This is not really a thing in Canada. You have the executive orders down south of the border that allows the president certain powers. That's a part of their system. We don't really necessarily have that up here. We have a version of it, and it's called an order in council. And that's what you just witnessed right here. It allows a prime minister to maybe lower a tax. It allows a prime minister to make regulatory changes, whether it be like environmental law or something along those lines, or environmental changes or tax changes. Allows them to make appointments, and then allows them to act in terms of emergencies, Emergencies Act, stuff like that. That's what order to council allows them to do. And this has been the talk and a point that I think Pierre Poilievre made in his address yesterday, is the carbon tax isn't gone. And Stephen Guilbeault even said so as much. He said that we've lowered the carbon price down to 0%. With an order of council, the only thing you can do is lower taxes. And that's what he did. He lowered it from 100% down to 0%. But the law is still there. If you really want to see action on this, you want to see the Liberals use this word called repeal. You want to see them repeal the carbon tax legislation. You don't want to see them do an order to council because the law is still in the books. He can increase that at really any point. Whereas if it was repealed, Parliament would have to be recalled. It would have to go through Parliament. It would have to go through the Senate, and then it'd be repealed. Done. So I understand from a liberal perspective how they'll explain this away is, well, you need to get it done quick. It need to be done, bring it down to 0%, then we can repeal it at a later date. Yeah, like a later date, like an election, after an election. How do we trust you to be able to do that? Or to do it? This is a very huge political move for the liberals here, Mark Carney. He can now point to, hey, I held my promise here. Look, symbolism, I've signed this document, we move on our way, no more carbon tax. But the people who don't know their politics don't know that that law is still in the books. And the reason why you want to see a repeal is because when it's repealed and goes through the proper processes, it's gone. And if it was ever to have to come back, it would have to go through the same legislative processes that can take months and sometimes years to go through. This was a political trick, and that's why it's important for all of us to be very vocal about it and speak about it in layman's terms, speak about it rationally, and so that people don't think you're crazy. Have reasonable conversations with people. It's not really going away. They've hidden it for now to satisfy people, but we are expecting an election to be called. And I know the talks are like, I don't know, Josh, I don't think it's going to happen. You know, from what I'm hearing, yes, the March 17th initial, which I thought was a very aggressive day. I was kind of personally surprised by it myself. Looks like it's not going to be that. As you saw there with Mark Carney, he says that he's heading off to Europe this week. And he's going to be there to solidify, I'm sure, some allyship, talk to some people, talk to his friends in Europe, the WEF, and then he'll be coming back. And when he's back, an election will be called. And he will likely be back near the end of the week. People are saying March 24th is looking like the date he's calling. Some people are going to say it's going to be the Friday, March 21st. Who knows? I think it likely will land on a Monday. So if not the 17th, it'll probably be the 24th, but we'll see. As I said, I was holding down March 17th, but again, I wasn't expecting him to be taken off to Europe. If him going off to Europe, he'll be pushed off a week. We'll see it March 24th. If not the 24th, then we know what really is going down. And he might actually try to hold on to this. So we'll see what happens. I don't think that's likely. I think it's very likely we'll be going into an election because the Liberals can't afford for him to be exposed. So they need to get this election done quick so Canadians don't realize who Mark Carney really is. But anyways, enjoy your Saturday. Have a good one. I'm out.